Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Nobody Asked Me Guys show. I'm your host, Melvin Casey Lars. And guys, tonight we are closing out the month. I repeat, we're closing out the month as we speak on domestic violence. However, as we know, domestic violence is 12 months, 365, and hopefully one day we'll be able to eradicate this conversation altogether. Unfortunately, since we're not able to eradicate this conversation altogether, we're going to talk about it some more. And tonight, our guest is investigator and former Mrs. Black, Louisiana, Mrs. LaTienda Pierre-Davis. Good evening, Mrs. Davis.
Good evening to you.
And listen, we're so happy to have you here. And we know we're going to be talking tonight about the effects that domestic violence have on children.
Good evening, everybody that's joining in. My name is LaTienda Pierre-Davis, and as the introduction already was given, yes, I am an investigator for the local district attorney's office in Caddo Parish, Louisiana, and also a former Miss Black Louisiana. But I am also president of the Caddo Bossier Domestic Violence Task Force. And I'm here tonight talking about the dynamics of what happens when children are growing up in homes with domestic violence, how it affects them as far as their ability to live their lives as they choose to. And so I just want to start out first and foremost by just giving a little background about why I am passionate about this topic. Prior to becoming investigator for the district attorney's office, I was a part of the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office for 13 years, and I was a deputy sheriff. And the last 9 years of my career there was centered around helping children, or juveniles, as the term would be used often. And I worked as a DARE officer. I also would support and assist in investigations during the summer months and become a juvenile detective. In addition to that, I was part of Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. And so I got a chance to really work with what is considered special victims. When you're dealing with young children and they've been exposed to crime as victims, they're in a special group because there are more laws that apply, more protocol that has to be done to make sure that justice is received for them. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So along the way, I became very passionate about understanding how different crimes does affect the ability of children to be able to live productive lives. And domestic violence is at the top of the list of those crimes that when a child is exposed to it, can and does alter the way that they're able to live a productive life. The statistics back it up. In fact, one of the main statistics that is out there is that a child that has been exposed to domestic violence growing up has a higher ratio than a child who's never seen domestic violence of actually repeating the cycle. And we will see with a lot of our abusers through working with counselors that is the case. Many of them grew up in homes where they saw violence repeatedly, and eventually there was no intervention to get them out of that environment. And so they normalized it in their brains growing up that this is the way that you behave when it comes to love. And so it's important for us to have that talk about what is misunderstood when it comes to children growing up in homes with domestic violence. So that's what I'm here to do tonight. Clear up some of the things that have been put out there and help people to understand some of the things that they're not getting.
Fantastic. Listen, while you and I are talking, okay.
Hey.
While you and I are talking, as you can see, we had a visitor to
Yeah.
pop in on us. But listen, I'm so happy to hear you share that, because as we talked before we came on the air, is that too many people think that just because they don't talk about it, that is somehow people does not know that it's happening. So tonight, as we share, and having been, I think I've told you many times before, having been one of those persons that grew up in a house fraught with domestic violence, I know that I am excited, and our viewers are excited to hear the information that you're going to share. So feel free to start wherever you'd like.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to start with is helping everyone to understand that when it comes to domestic violence relationship, children are oftentimes weaponized in a domestic violence incident. It does become harder for the victim to leave and leave a violent relationship when they have children, because you have a connection that extends over numerous number of years, because you're talking about 0 to 18 is it is the responsibility of the parents or whoever is the guardian to raise the child and get that child to a age where they can start actually making their own decisions. And by law, they can actually make the decision on who they want to live with, stay with. Those type of things don't really come until they're about 17, pushing towards 18 years of age. So you're talking about a long period of time of being attached or connected in a way to someone who is being violent to you. And so the first thing that I wanted to start out by addressing is a, I wouldn't say an excuse, but I would say is a tactic that is oftentimes used by the abuser and has been ingested by many victims, is that I'm staying for the kids. You know, I don't want my family torn apart because the kids will miss their father or the kids will miss their mother. And so I want to start out by breaking down and helping people to understand what is really going on. Okay, somewhere in the fold of when we start to talk about I'm staying for the sake of the kids because I don't want my family broken up, there has been some type of conversation and some type of grooming between the abuser and the victim, to where the abuser has basically told that victim at some point, if you try to leave, I'm going to keep the kids. You can go, but the kids stay with me. And this is a tactic that starts to wear on the parent, because that parent cares for their children. They want their children to be with them because they really 100% will not feel safe unless that their child or children are with them. And so the first thing that the abuser recognizes is, tell them, they will have that conversation at some point that will run along the lines, you can leave, but the children stay here. And so, of course, that's the first thing that's going to cause the victim to stay, because they don't want to break the family up. And if this abuser keeps the kids, that's breaking the family up. And then the victim starts to think in their mind, okay, the kids love their parent, which as children grow up, if you put it in front of them and that's the only thing they know of, then of course you're going to put them in a position where they're going to be conditioned to believe that that is it. That's it. So if they continuously are put in an environment where they are seeing a parent abuse another parent, that's it. That's really what they have. They don't have any opportunity to even love anyone else, because that's what's being pushed in front of them, is that you're going to love this parent. That's something that I will hear from victims when they want to drop charges, is that they love their father, okay, or they love their mother, and I don't want to see them. But you got to realize something. If this child witnessed you, for example, if a child witnessed their mother, okay, because we know larger portion women are more than men likely to be abused, but I'm not excluding men from this conversation. Males are abused too, and they go through the same cycle as females. But let's say, for example, you have a mother who her child happens to walk out right when the father is abusing her. And let's say he decides to strangle her. Now, we know that strangling someone, choking somebody, you're obstructing the airway. That's a form of trying to kill them. If you're strangling them, you literally are trying to kill them. And so this child walks out and they see their mother. They see the hands of the father around the neck, squeezing the neck area. They're witnessing the gagging. They're witnessing the eyes going red. They might actually witness her lose conscience in the process. So when that mother goes back and she sees that child interacting with the father, if she sees them talking or playing or whatever, she might believe in her mind that that child has absent it from their mind. No, they haven't. children are very resilient. There have been studies that have put out that talks about how a child's brain can process trauma differently than adult brain. And so that child hasn't put that memory out of their brain. What they have basically done is they probably cased it somewhere and they're in a survival mode, and they know I better show this man, my dad, some type of form of love because I got to keep him at bay because I just witnessed what he did to my mama, and I don't know if he could do that to me. That's something that victims have to start thinking about when they're believing that this child is better off still being in the home when there's violence being present, and that they're making that decision: should I stay and possibly be exposed to more violence, or take a chance and go? So that's the first thing I want to, clear up for anybody out there, is the mindset of I'm staying because, I don't want to see the family break apart. You really don't know the psychological change you're about to create by exposing and taking that chance this child's going to be exposed to more violence in front of them.
Now, as you share that, when the child, when he or she has decided to allow me to use the word pretend, have allowed themselves to pretend that this action did not happen, or if they are holding on to the fact that it did happen. How then, if they are put in a position that they want to thwart this from happening again, and that they themselves become what they feel like is the savior, is there counseling available for children that may be in that mindset of, if this happens again, I'm going to do this, or in order to prevent this from happening again, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, etc. Is there any place designated for these children to receive any type of counseling?
Well, in our area in Caddo Parish, we do have Child Advocacy Center, a CAC. Our Child Advocacy Center is called Gingerbread House. They specialize in having counseling available that can help. However, the trick is that there has to be a report, and there has to be a chain of events that happens that lead them to be able to be set up to counsel that child. Okay. And so there are other agencies. We have in our area Project Celebration, Family Justice Center. If it's identified that this child is going through a vengeance stage due to domestic violence, or even going through a stage where their selves might be raging and wanting to commit acts of domestic violence themselves because of what they're seeing, they're acting out is according. There are counseling available for it, but the key is there's got to be some type of chain of events, such as a report, and that's where the crucial area starts to become. Because the if the victim does not report that they're being abused, then the child is going to continue to witness it behind closed doors. If they get to school, and at school they cut up and they act out, and nobody stops to start asking the question, what's going on? But rather they react to the behavior and not try to figure out what's triggering the behavior. Then there's no way it's going to be discovered that this child is dealing with domestic violence, and they won't be able to identify it. And so that counseling is not able to be available to them unless some chain of events take place where they can be, that it is put out there that this is what's going on, and this is why they need that counseling.
Well, so as you share that, and being an investigator, and as you've shared with us, having worked in law enforcement for many years, when it comes to the child and the criminal justice system, and I guess I'm asking a question in the form of a statement. Where does a line ever gets drawn, and especially happen for boys? And I'm speaking for a person that never actually got into the situation, but I thought many times about getting into it. Where is
Mm-hmm.
the line drawn for the son if he does take action and commit bodily harm or God forbid death? Where
Mm-hmm.
is the line drawn as far as it works in law enforcement? Or is there a line?
The thing is that trying to identify what the line is, again, that goes back to, is there records, is there is there documentation of chain of events that can show that this is indeed a situation that was created not by that child, but by that child's environment, and they went into that direction where eventually their mind said, okay, that's it. But if it's on the surface, if show up and a young person took it in their own hands and they ended up taking the life of that the abuser, they're going to end up being funneled through the criminal justice system. If there's nothing there to document that there was underlying things going on, and this might be a case of self-defense as a result of domestic violence, but that's why I say that line. That line is like swiggle swiggle all over the place because of the circumstances. If you don't report it, it's technically like it didn't happen, and
Mm.
that's what we struggle against, especially in domestic violence relationships. Uh, Not reporting it is oftentimes a situation we deal with, because many times when I ask the victim, has something like this happened before, they'll say, yes, it has. And I said, well, have you ever contacted law enforcement? No. And so you see what I'm saying? It might have been 4 or 5 times where this child has witnessed their parent being abused and nothing was ever done. And then one day they snap as a result. And nobody knows that, yeah, there was stuff that led up to this because there's nothing there on record. So it reporting, if it's not there, it's technically like it's almost didn't happen.
Wow. So it's a catch-22, more or
Yes.
less. And if we can segue to the next question here, when we have situations like that, just holistically, and I know that you've mentioned the gingerbread house, and I know there are other places you've mentioned, Project Celebration, etc. When working with moms, and allow me as a man to just speak of the moms. I know people say, well, men in domestic violence situations too, but when referencing the moms, I mean, and well, maybe the men too.
Hmm.
Does anyone ever have a real conversation? I think I asked you this before, as, with the mother or with the recipient of the abuse, that of the situation that they are putting their children in by remaining in those relationships, as especially when it references not only their psychological damage, but also getting them involved in the criminal justice system.
Well, one of the things that oftentimes occurs is that you have to analyze where that victim is in the stage of their mindset. Are they open for that type of conversation? That is where the counselors and all the support services start to take a benefit, because they're able to break down and chisel away and get through to that victim to say, hey, it's not just about you, it's also about your family too, and so again, we run into situations where the messenger becomes extremely important. There might be times where that victim is at a stage where if I'm on the phone talking with them, they might be comfortable enough to go in that direction where I can have a conversation with them about the safety of their children and everything, because they're mentally there and they're mentally ready for it. Then sometimes it might not take place until after Project Celebration or some other domestic violence advocacy center or group has stepped in and started working with them. So it's different levels. The area where I said that conversation probably is not going to happen is right on the scene when the officers are there, because it's so much chaos going on. It's very few messages that are going to get sent where the victim is going to remember, it's going to stick in their brain, and they're going to actually think about it and so forth. And so you have to just analyze the victim at their stage. If I got a victim that's talking to me about dropping charges and doing this and doing that, I would I back off from the conversation only because I know their mind right now is somewhere where they're not ready to listen to that part about safety of children.
And and speaking of children, and last question now, because I want to stay within our time frame.
Hmm.
Excuse me, as a former principal, I dealt a lot with our students once they turn 16 and 15, filing to be emancipated so that they can be their own spokespersons. So in that realm of emancipation, is your office inundated, or some of the other agencies you mentioned inundated, or even have individuals, no matter the age, actually asked to be emancipated or removed from the home? Obviously, we know they love their
Hmm.
parents, but because of the risk of either harming themselves or the
Hmm.
parents.
Well, my end where I'm at, we don't exactly deal with the emancipation part, but of course, our juvenile court, family court, are the ones that handle those emancipations, and so they are the ones that get to, reach out and contact wherever the child has received social services from, and communicate with them about what is going on with that child for them to be emancipated. We also have CASA that are court appointed advocates. These are people that go in and advocate for children, especially if they're dealing with those type of situations where they're trying to get to an age and a stage where they can speak up for themselves and they can remove themselves from home. So we have court appointed advocates that can step in to help them. And these are volunteers who have extreme forms of training, level of training to help deal with and support that child when they start going that direction. But yes, it's out there. The support is out there for that child. But again, it's like you got to get them to that stage, and you got to figure out a way to make sure that communication is there, so that when that time comes, if they say I can't take this no more, my mom or my dad won't leave, but I've got to do something to protect me. And so that's when it comes so forth.
All right, well, thank you so very much. Well, investigator and former Mrs. Black, Louisiana. Are there any parting words you'd like to share with our guests?
Well, I like to just say that I always believe that it takes a village to raise a child, and it is important that we all start to embrace that. It doesn't matter if they are biologically our children or they're our children through mentorship or however. So it does take a village to raise a child. If you see a child that is in need, do whatever you can within legal realm, okay? Because we don't want any people getting in trouble, but do all that you can in a legal manner to support that child, especially if they're growing up in a home where you find out information that they are being victimized by witnessing domestic violence. You really need to step in, because we all, to a certain degree, as adults, we're all mandated reporters. And so we should be prepared that if we see or we hear or we find out information, a child gives that information to us, they're trusting us to do something to protect them.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so very much. I always have individuals that have other questions that I like to ask me once I let the experts go. But if someone would like to contact you directly, is there an email or a number, or
Yes.
they just okay?
Okay. My email is going to be LATIENDA dot Davis, DAV as in Victor, IS at gmail.com. And that's the best way. They can shoot me an email, and I will respond back to them accordingly.
Okay, fantastic. Listen, this obviously, we could talk for 2 or 3 more hours, but we
Yeah.
do want to be respectful of your time, Investigator Davis, and we do appreciate so very much you being here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, as our guests, we appreciate you being here with us. And every Friday night, 7 o'clock p.m., we're right back, and we always have interesting guests. So come back and join us again. I'm your host, Melvin Casey Lars. This has been the Nobody Asked Me Guys show. If you didn't pre-vote November 3rd,
Yeah.
2020, please go out and vote.
Yeah.
Investigator Davis, have a great and wonderful evening.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.